And I was so proud of our community. The creative channel is a thing now, just discussion. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, our community is really awesome.
Yeah.
So shout out to everybody in the Discord.
Not to sound like too corporate, but the engagement is very good in Discord.
Dad engagement, though.
The key performance indicators were used for the Discord. But no, but really not. But anyway, back to the question. What are the things? Greetings, my internet people. It's your boy, Bradston, and welcome to another episode of the Super Agile Bros. You already know what it is. We're about to make it go off in this situation. But, of course, before we get started in, the regular banters and chattering, I gotta introduce the brothers. I gotta introduce the boys. First up to the stage, we got our brother, Kyle. How are you doing, sir?
We in it. I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. It's another good day. Another day in paradise.
Okay. And back from out of the woods is the boy, the seductress, Steve. Welcome back.
Still smell like dirt.
Making up new words in an effort to. So I gotta apologize for last week, guys. I just wasn't feeling it. I thought about it, and I just don't like y'all. It is personal.
Yes.
After episode 50, I started realizing how much I dislike everyone who listens to this podcast.
Yes. We told you.
The whole thing is
this
beneath
all
me.
sounds really familiar.
I can't tolerate it anymore. All these plebeians are lesser than me. I just needed time away from all of y'all.
Wow.
Told you. From the horse's mouth. From the horse's mouth.
From the wood horse's mouth.
We just spoke the truth. We don't lie on this podcast. We're just here to deliver the truth. Like the world is flat.
And none of you believed us.
In a certain sense. Or what is it he says? From a certain point of view. That's right.
yeah, the world is flat, things like that. So,
never been to space.
There is no space.
Your parents love you.
Space is fake. Ooh. Oh my.
From a certain point of view.
Yeah.
It's your own fault for believing that in the first place.
Yeah. Santa Claus is real. Your parents love you. So, today's going to be a good episode. All of them are always great.
That's right. That's also the truth.
Believe us. But so this episode is kind of interesting because we had one thing planned for today's episode. Things didn't work out the way that we wanted to. But next episode, that thing will be happening. You can probably guess what it is, but you probably can't. So good luck. But so recently, a lot of different things have been happening in the world of the internet. And I think I'm not going to talk about them necessarily. They may come up in conversation today. But one thing I think that's been on the mind of the brothers is just this idea of what the world of like content creation, streaming, YouTubers, all that type of stuff. And we wanted to have a little conversation about, what is it really like to make content? What does it feel like? A whole lot of different stuff. The conversation can go all over the place. But I think it'll be a good one. It's one that me and the bros have from time to time in our special Slack channel. So I wanted to start off with a simple question for all of us to answer. The simple question is, what makes somebody a content creator? What makes them certified in these streets?
Certified.
As a content creator.
A CCC, if
so
you will.
You've implied that you have to be certified.
Certified.
I don't know if I would have made that assumption to start.
Street certified. You ever heard that term? If somebody's street certified?
Yeah, either certified or street certified.
Mm-hmm.
There's still an outside certification happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily part of.
There's still a 5-week course.
That
you have to go through.
If you don't believe there's a certification process in becoming a content creator, what makes somebody a content creator then? If they don't get certified, at a minimum.
Well, they don't gotta get certified. What are they gonna do? Basically, someone who creates content. Probably a lot of overlap with influencers. At least for the more popular ones. For the certified ones, they're influencers.
Okay.
Maybe that's what it is. If you get certified, you influence.
Okay.
But yeah, I think someone who makes content, especially, I don't want to say like anyone who ever makes any content, but like it's the difference between writing and being a writer, you know, like
Okay.
you don't have to be successful to be a writer, but you have to write more than just, you know, once.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So are you okay? Well, I'll just answer and say, like you said, Steve, I don't think you could just because you copy a meme and then paste it on your Facebook page, you're all of a sudden a content creator. I think it's similar to somebody who is an athlete or something. Like it has to be something that you're like some people are athletic, right? And some people are creative. But that doesn't mean that you're an athlete or a creator, right? So I think like an athlete is somebody who pursues the goal of being successful in the athletic realm.
Yeah.
And whatever that measure of success is up to them. And similarly, a creator is somebody who, you know, pursues success in the creative realm. And in our day and age, I think a content creator is somebody who makes content for the public other than themselves or their friend group. Well, maybe their friend group but yeah, just out on the internet. The public
I
internet.
think on the surface, it's got to be something made with the intent to share it and for other people to consume, or else I don't know what it falls into, but that's kind of, I guess, the criteria is that you can't make it, like you were saying, for yourself. And then it moves into the influencer whenever you become like a credible source of value in that area. So you can be a content creator before you're an influencer. Because, I mean, you could be for even athletics and creative ventures, you can be a poor content creator, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could be a bad athlete, you know, like somebody who's never made it on a team, but it's still your pursuit. So I feel like like when I think of the word, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm a content creator," I think I naturally go to I'm a professional, or I'm a I don't know, like a consistent, like maybe that's what I'm thinking. Like,
well, it's like what you said, you know, it's the intent, you know, like the intent is to find success in that realm. It isn't just to like do whatever.
I think it goes back to the idea you said earlier, Steve, about doing something once. I mean, if you do it a lot, then that's how you get, like for the music example, you do something so much that you get so proficient at it that you become a musician. But you can be a content creator because you play music. But if you only play music once, then you have one piece of content out there, but the word creator kind of insinuates that there's a continuous flow of some sort.
Sure, yeah. And it isn't oh dang, I had two separate points and now they're kind of muddled in my head as you were speaking.
Muddle them.
They have become one.
Muddle them, boys. I might have to get back to you. I think I might have to get back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so there's like this other part of all of like being a content creator, because I feel like there's people who will say I'm a content creator, but like there's a joke on the internet that like if somebody's like comes to you and says like oh what's your career, I'm a content creator, that probably means they don't have a job. You know, like
sure.
they just,
well, if that's all they say,
yeah, like,
you know, the implication is that people would lead with their professional careers first.
Yeah, like nothing against all my artistic people out there, but like if you say like, oh, I'm an artist, okay,
what you trying to
I'm
say?
a musician, as Kyle said. Like, does that mean that are you a professional content creator? Are you a professional musician? You know, I feel like there's delineations.
Yeah, the connotation hasn't really gone away from, like the starving artist thing. Mm-hmm. It definitely carries over into the content creation just because there's a lot of video and photography, a lot of overlap with, I guess, more popular art, if you will.
So here's a thought, right? Photography I was going to ask, is photography part of, because in my head, like writing is kind of like content. It's within what I would say is the realm of being a content creator. And I was going to ask about photography, but now that I think about it, there are people who photograph like, for weddings or, for events or something. And it's to sell the photographs to a client. But there are also people, so I was going to say, oh, is that content creation? But there's also people who are doing more artistic photography and either professionally or otherwise. And I would say that's probably is content creation. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that idea that it's publicly available or accessible in some capacity. Of course, there can be like a paywall, people have Patreons, right? So they have like their YouTube channel and they're like, oh, if you want to see exclusive content, come to our Patreon. But I feel like a photographer, going back to that example, like if there's a photographer who takes pictures and then posts all their photos on a blog or something, a public blog, or makes video compilations of their photos, or, is on, what's that site? I don't even know if that site exists. There used to be a photo site. I'm not even sure I know what Tumblr is. But there's another site that people used to put photos up on all the time.
It's like Imgur?
No.
Unsplash, Photo Bucket.
No, it was kind of like
DeviantArt.
No, I can't remember.
DeviantArt's a good example.
If it comes back to me, probably on DeviantArt as well. But yeah, if you put it on a public space where you can like reach people and grow a following, and I think that's one part of it. Like, it's not just making content to be purchased, right? You could be an artist who makes paintings and sells them to private collectors, but it's also like you're making content with the expressed purpose of gaining a following in the public sphere.
So it's branding as well.
Maybe. I don't know. What do y'all I'm questioning
socially,
myself on that.
I think it's socially poised. Like, the intent is to use like some sort of, I guess, social media platform, because the difference, I guess, between doing it for a client is that it's, a two-way transaction. Whereas if you're creating content, it's for other people to consume and then talk about within themselves. Maybe they share it. And so it's like you're generating, it's kind of hard to explain. I guess you're like generating this momentum based on the thing you put out there versus, I guess, you make it for a specific purpose and then it stops there. And so like that social element is, I think, integral to what makes you a content creator in the grand scheme of things.
It makes me think about like graffiti artists, like them being like the original content creators, because
you can't think of anything before graffiti artists that would have.
I mean, there's probably other things, right? But like they make content, which would be their graffiti, their art. They put it on public spaces, trains, billboards, walls, or whatever. And their whole goal is to, create their name to be bigger, to go big, to go, what I used to call it, to go,
you go viral now.
Citywide. There's a phrase like go citywide or whatever.
Streets ahead.
Like their goal is like people will know them all over, and then they can travel and like, oh snap, Banksy just hit up this area. Oh, like, Killer Totem, he hit up this spot. Great and Bates. I'm just naming some random graffiti artists. Like, their names grow from their content, and that's how they continue to grow their eminence, right? From building an audience just purely from putting content on public spaces, Like, that feels like, I mean, now we say it's like in a digital format, but that's kind of what I feel like is like one of the originators of like content creation for the public's sake,
I could see that, yeah. And before that, I guess, would be cave paintings. And the crazy part about that is, before the internet, I guess, was so widespread, there was graffiti, but it was just someone would take a picture, it'd be in a news article. And so now it's like at the same time, someone could see a picture of a wall thousands of miles away easier than they could before then. It's also harder to find or to even get discovered because there's so many people doing the exact same thing. And so it's very competitive in that sense. So it's still just as, I guess, daunting of a task to get discovered in that way, to be found in the tri-state area, to be able to travel because somebody found your graffiti, even if you're a solely digital content creator these days.
Yeah. It makes me go back to this idea of like, what is a professional content creator? Because just like I think there are a lot of athletes who are not professionals, right? Like somebody who played football in college or, in high school, like they're athletes, but they're not professional football players. Like, do you when you make it to that extent, that's I guess when you're actually being paid.
That's
right?
the definition of professional. Yeah.
Is that
paid for
definition of professional? Being paid to do some thing?
Yeah, if you're making a living, or I don't know if you have to make a living, if you're getting paid, but definitely if you're making a living, then you are a professional.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it makes sense. There's a lot of rappers, and then there's like professional rappers, right? There's a lot of musicians, and then there's professional musicians,
Yeah.
There's somebody who was talking about how they know a person who's like one of the best, let's just say like archers or something. I'm just choosing a random thing. I know that's not correct. Like they're one of the best archers in the world, but they never compete, like they can beat any professional, like professionals will come to their place and lose to them. But the person's like, yeah, this is just something that I do for me, and I never want to compete, And it's like, wow, he's like a master bowman or whatever, but he's not a professional bowman, which is interesting, Like, so there's probably like a gradient where there's people who are really great at making content, for example, ourselves, but we're not making.
Nobody laughed.
Sad.
I was just waiting for the setup.
But we're not here trying to monetize anything. You know what I'm saying? Like we could probably do a big push marketing and push it all out there, but we're like, we're content creators, but we're not professionals, So
I guess that's the distinction between the proficient and the professional is the person who's proficient at it getting paid. Like you said earlier, I wonder though, if that should make them, I guess, in the eyes of a novice, especially, any less of a professional. Because it's not like they don't have the ability to be a professional. It's more of a choice at that point.
Yeah, I think there's confusion because we have kind of conflated the term professional with skill, but I think it literally just means you're getting paid. And there is a connotation of, you must be skillful because you're getting paid, and if you weren't skillful, who would pay you?
Ooh,
and if you weren't getting paid, or if you weren't reliable, who would pay you? All these other things that make a professional stand out above an amateur. But those are all just connotations. And technically, you're right. Like an amateur could be more skilled or more reliable or just a better person for a job or whatever for a concert than a professional.
I mean, if anything, if society tells us anything, it's not necessarily the people who are best at a thing that are at the top of their field professionally. It's the people who are best at selling that bill of goods, right? Like how many singers exist? And nothing against professional singers, but some of them are like good, like great. There's some great ones. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like from what I understand, Lady Gaga can kill it. You know what I'm saying? Like she can sing, but like then there's other artists who might not be at her level, but are making maybe more money than her or less, or equivalent. And then there's people who are probably even better than Lady Gaga who can't, like book a gig.
They can't break into the scene.
Yeah, getting 100 views on TikTok.
Yeah, and they got the most incredible range, and so there's you're definitely right when you say that. Like we generally connotate professional to skilled because I don't want to.
There's another reason actually. There's another reason for that, and I think it's because if you are a professional, then for you, getting better at your whatever, at your skill, is an investment in your
Mm-hmm.
career.
Okay.
And so you actually spend time and money doing that. Whereas someone who's an amateur, they probably have to have some other job to live. And for them, that's a much less useful investment. And so probably professional people get better faster than amateurs because they actually
So
need and want
solely
to.
focused on maybe that, or primarily focused might be a better way to say.
So like when we talk about like indie devs, it's always like, oh yeah, I worked on this game for 10 years in my basement on a shoestring budget, but then I just decided one day I'm gonna quit my job, and kind of made the bet they would become professional, but they invested all their time and energy into making this game happen or getting better or doing whatever.
Yeah, that's so interesting because, like, I just even think about my story, like in game dev, right? Like, I left my job and I made an app and I kickstarted it, and it was 100% my time. Successful Kickstarter, published it on the App Store, got it out there. But I would have never at that time considered myself a professional game developer. You know what I'm saying? Even though I was 100% engaged in that industry, like I would just say like I'm still an amateur,
Yeah.
Well,
you were trying to be professional,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like there is like one part of, okay, 100% or primary dedication, but also being like recognized in your field.
Making it.
Or by customers or consumers or listeners or viewers, watch whatever. So just like that. So let me ask y'all this. What makes you said this earlier, Steve, influencer. What makes somebody an influencer? Like, is it, well, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Instead of like what do y'all think makes somebody an influencer?
I think what makes someone an influencer is their ability to affect trends. So if when they do something, make something, say something, that if it in their space or even outside of their space, that things shift and change. Like if somebody's watching them and then, basing their content on them or going to them for more knowledge, any of those things. I think when it comes beyond, I guess, someone just consuming the content, but like there's an expectancy to have something alter because they produce content.
So not just having a lot of followers, but having either having followers that will shift and move at their beck and call.
It's pretty much, yeah.
It's like this thing. It's like in UFC, like there's like everybody's favorite fighter, like the fans, and then it's like the fighter's favorite fighter. Like it's the person who sets the standard for like what it means to be a fighter. Even if they're not the most popular or the best, they could be the influencer within that industry. But like in content creation, like let's take Mr. Beast, for example. Like he's clearly a professional content creator, but he's also an influencer. Like if he were to just completely change everything, like, hey, from now on, my videos are going to be 3 minutes long. That's what the algorithm said. You know what I'm saying? If he says that,
yeah,
everybody's going to follow him. Like even other big, content creators. Because he kind of,
maybe, I mean, that's one thing of it. But I guess in my head, influencing isn't just like that's like a high level thing. I was thinking more like if Mr. Beast says, "Hey, here's a charity to plant trees," like that charity is going to blow up because everyone's going to start donating to that charity.
Yeah,
like that's his power as an influencer.
Yeah, I could see. So they also command power outside of their, like not even just directly within,
but from their viewers. Yeah,
from their viewers. But I mean, there's people who, okay, say somebody has a following of 100K, like followers on YouTube, right? And they have very, very like a strong fan base. Like they'll never get 1 million fans, but they have 100K strong fans. Support them in everything, buy their merch, blah, 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 blah. Would you say that person's an influencer?
Ooh.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, 100,000 people is a lot of people.
What if they have 100 people?
And it seems,
I would say you're barely an influencer. I mean, so the part of the, I don't know, maybe this is more connotation stuff, but influencers also are, in my head, they're not just people with followers that can enact change, but are people who are selling a lifestyle. You know, like I always think about, like when I think about like Instagram or TikTok influencers, it's always people who act like they're rich, go on a bunch of go do cool adventures, travel a lot,
high fashion,
all this like
yeah,
ultra bougie stuff, and people want to have that lifestyle, and that's why they follow them. That's a kind of a narrow view of influencers, because we've been talking about all these other ways that someone could be an influencer, but that's my first thought. And so I'm like, you can't do that if you only have 100 people following you.
But if
I guess it would come down to, I guess, the individual level, because I think you could influence, like if you have a genuine 100-person following, you know, that does see the things you do as, I guess, better than their current lifestyle or status, or like you're still like, and I don't know how it's always a mystery how people find other people and how their communities develop, but they have like interests. And so I don't know. I feel like it would almost be unfair just because they don't have the mass of a larger influencer, that if those people are, I guess, genuinely involved in the community of this 100 subscriber channel, page, whatever it is, to say that they're not an influencer, I guess, just because they have less influence by comparison.
I mean, sure. I would maybe in that case say they're less of an influencer, or they're a less successful influencer. 'Cause,
I'd agree with that, yeah.
So
I mean, numbers are on a scale, so can this be.
One thing makes me think that like an influencer isn't just about how many people follow you per se, but it's also like how like your active like goals are to kind of, maybe not actively, but like think about like, so there's some channels on YouTube that have like 10 million followers or subscribers, but they only release content like once every 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And gets huge views, hundreds of millions of views, like gets spread around. But I wouldn't consider those channels that are influencers, right?
Right. And
I'd agree with that.
That's because of what I said, right? Because there isn't necessarily like, they're not really selling their brand or their lifestyle. The content is what people like.
But then I would say somebody like Abba and Preach, who they have a strong following, they persistently make content, and they do it on different platforms. I would say they're influencers. Like,
you wouldn't?
I would say they're influencers.
Oh yeah, I would say.
And they actively in their videos are like, do not Zionize us. We are just dudes. Y'all are our fans, not our friends. Like, they just share their thoughts and opinions honestly, genuinely, whatever, however you want to take their approach. But I feel like it's also just how connected they are to their community that makes them influencers, not just that like they're trying to get people to follow them. Like,
I don't know if trying that hard is
like
the biggest biggest indicator.
Like, yeah, like they're not talking about their lifestyle. Like, you don't really know what they do outside of what they make on YouTube, but they do really influence the discourse that happens amongst a lot of communities, you know?
Yeah. Between the consistency.
They do kind of talk about their lifestyle, though. Like, they don't have a ridiculous lifestyle, but they're very much putting forth this image of, like, down-to-earth, respectful people, give what you get, not being caught up. You know, they cast themselves in contrast to, like, the alpha red pill type folks, and who are like really obsessed with image and money and, you know, vapid sex, but like they don't. I think like there's kind of a lifestyle there. It's not maybe as like insane and highly saturated as, you know, Logan Paul's lifestyle, but
they're countercultural.
There's something there.
They're countercultural,
yeah.
But like it seems like that's not. They're only countercultural because that's just who they are. And their influence just happens to be a nature of their content has a certain impact, like
Sure, regardless.
like Mr. Mr.
You're
Beast,
definitely right.
Mr. Beast is definitely an influencer, but he's like, I like to make really crazy videos. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think the type of content also does play a big part. Like the Alvin and Preach example, first off, they're super consistent. Like if you watch one of their videos, they have an enormous backlog, and then you're going to get their newest video in your recommendations tomorrow because they're posting something. But then also they're covering new topics, things that are happening in the news. So it's always trendy, typically, what they're talking about. And so that influences people's opinions because they're giving their opinions at the same time somebody else is learning about it or hearing about it for the first time. And so that influences how people think. And then, yeah, they have a massive following. And then because of all these things combined, they're getting, noted by other large creators. And so it's like a conversation that they're having in their space because we as watchers don't live in the world of these giant content creators, but they're feeding off of each other and pulling all this information. They're covering the same information sometimes and then having varying opinions. And yeah, I think because of the consistency too, that you can kind of glean their lifestyle, their tendencies, what things they prefer over others, especially when they make comments about something that happens that they either really agree with or really disagree with. And you really get to see, their heart, I guess, on that matter.
yeah. Yeah, it keeps making me think that, like, the more, like, if you're consistent in your present a lot, like, if you make quite a bit of content frequently that's consistent and good and your audience likes it, you kind of invariably just become an influencer because, like, you're very present in people's lives. And like you said, like, even if you're not directly saying, like, oh, I live in this town and I do this and I have jets and I do, you know what I'm saying? People still can glean what your lifestyle is like and who you are behind the scenes, like I want to be like Abba and Preach, da, da, da,
Yeah.
I want to be like the Kardashians who are maybe they're more upfront about it, but it still has the same kind of impact in a way.
And I think something else about influencers specifically is that another thing in my head, maybe it's just in my head, but it's like, if you say you're an influencer, it almost feels like that implies that there's not much else, right? Like that your content is just, I don't know, how do I put this? Like if you're a writer, you're kind of an influencer, right? Because people read what you write and they like you and they whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You have followers and maybe you can change some opinions with your Twitter account or something. But like, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm an influencer. You'd say you're a writer. It almost feels like if you say you're an influencer, it means that the content you're creating is missing other elements of creativity. And so with Abba and Preach, they're just telling their opinions, So there's nothing else you could call them. Commentators, maybe?
Yeah, commentary.
Commentators is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
so now here's another question. Can you...
thing.
Do you have to self-identify as an influencer? Like,
no.
Like, or is it just a title that's given to you? Like, no, even if you're not trying to do that,
I think it's given for different reasons, but mainly because of, I guess, the impact that you have. Because I know people who, I guess, wouldn't consider themselves influencers that, they're just content creators and they get really involved with their communities, mostly like gaming channels and stuff that I hear this about. But so they grow and they get bigger than they ever expect. But they continuously make like the same stuff. So they're not trying to influence anybody and they're just making gaming content, playing games. But then they become or get the influencer tag whenever they get in trouble because they say, well, you have this massive following. So you have influence over all these people that are following after you. So the thing you did, you took advantage of them as an influencer, not as a content creator.
You know what it is now? I realized in my head, I've always, so I think here's a thought. I think that influencer is almost the exact same thing as celebrity.
Fair enough.
Like,
fair enough.
If you're an actor, then you're probably famous and you can be a celebrity. But if you're just a celebrity, like, there are people who are famous for basically no reason. Kardashians. And this it's like, okay, well, what can you call them? They're a celebrity. And I think the advent of like the more personal content that people do create, like, you know, you have your own Twitter account, like, or your own Instagram or your own TikTok.
Interesting.
Like, there's more of like it feels like face to face. And so celebrity has kind of become influencer. But I think that the relationship between influencer and content creator is similar or the same to celebrity and like
Actor,
you know, whatever,
movie
actor,
star, basketball
writer. Yeah,
player.
exactly.
Yeah,
Athlete.
it's almost no. That's very insightful. It's like
famous for no reason except that you're famous.
I mean, in some cases, they're famous for a reason of creating content that is engaging, right? Because there's definitely influencers who are celebrities, right? Like from other realms, like social, like in particular, we're talking about like social media, digital content influencers, right? But like, there's 100% influencers in the sports realm, right? Who are just, they have a big impact in anything that they say, anything they do online. But that might not even be their main goal. It's just like, just a part of it now. Like, oh, I'm LeBron. Like, if I go on Twitter and say something, I'm an influencer. You know what I'm saying? By default, because I'm already a celebrity. But like, now, it almost feels like an influencer is a celebrity has a more personal touch on their fan base. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, social media.
Yeah, like
I think in most cases they do personally grow their fan base, as opposed to if you were an actor who becomes a celebrity, like you're in a movie or something. So you kind of secondhand, I guess, grow your fan base because you did well in someone else's production. While especially with YouTube, you're doing it all yourself.
We have our own platforms now. We interact directly with our fans.
Like Denzel Washington is a celebrity, right?
Right.
But Will Smith is an influencer. Even, before the slap that was heard around the world, he was an influencer. Like, Denzel Washington just exists. And like, he does his thing. But you don't really like hear about Denzel Washington making motivational TikToks and like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's like, I live my life and you see me when I show up on the screen, right? That's his touch on people.
Or on like interviews.
In interviews. Yeah, something like that.
He did a speech at his college.
That used to be,
He did a speech at his college a couple of years ago that went. But yeah, he doesn't do that.
But
stuff routinely.
that's just what celebrities always do. They just show up and then somebody else records them and they're, oh, like, check out this. But like, Will Smith is actively engaging with his audience through social media and YouTube and whatever, and like trying to continue to build that. That feels like very different,
The Rock and Kevin Hart kind of do similar things.
I'm gonna give myself a cookie for coming up with
I think that's the strong one. Okay. Now this is something I was thinking the whole time.
Oatmeal raisin.
So where does this all end? Right? Like, where does this all go? Like
tomorrow.
Like
the world ends tomorrow.
Haven't you heard?
Like, content creator and like writer, content creator, movie director, content creator, musician, right? I say that to say, like, I almost feel like there's just like all those things, there's like an expiration date unless you stay relevant or something. Like, it feels like a lot of social media influencers and content creators have like maybe a decade at most.
Oh, yeah.
Before their career, like, I guess maybe it's just YouTube hasn't existed long enough for us to really see what a long form content creator looks like. But it just feels like most content creators last for a little bit and then they wane. Like, rise, and then they drop. And I guess that would be the same with musicians, right? Or even, I guess, basketball players. But like, what's the end goal of a content creator? Do they just, like, what happens after nobody wants to watch Corey Kenshin's channel,
So from what I've seen, content creators do something I think that's a little bit unique, which is after a while, especially if they've grown, they'll try something like drastically different every so often. And then this will kind of, cause a mass exodus in their own communities sometimes, or they'll bring in new people. But it's just like, it seems like on their own, they kind of get sick of, I guess, the place they're stuck in. And so I feel like that's kind of the rinse and repeat. And like, if you're big enough in a way that you want to continue, like, you know, PewDiePie, for example, he did like all gaming stuff, I think, in the beginning. And then he went on to more like vlogging as of late. Like, it's all just him going places. And it's a completely different form, but he's one of the longest running and one of the most subscribed channels still. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's an influencer for sure, who's more or less dictating, I guess, in a way, where people who are, you know, years behind him can go and what they can try. But I think you're right in the fact that it hasn't been quite long enough to definitively say. But that's what I've seen.
I mean, I think that you might have to look at older art forms. Like, what do actors do if they can't stay relevant their entire lives? I think, you know, a lot of them try really hard, maybe bend over backwards, but like, I guess people just pick up day jobs, you know, like they try to use their skills that they've honed to have just like kind of a quote unquote normal career. And if they're lucky, they can find another niche. So I hear horror stories a lot. There's I forget her name. There's some girl on YouTube. She's pretty popular, and then she got a show. She got a comedy show or something, and everyone was just ragging on her. I do not remember her name
or whatever.
Yes,
yeah,
it was Lily Singh. She got a show, and people were just dogging on her because it was not good. It was not funny, and they realized that like she was really popular, kind of within her own niche, and it did not like her skills and her, you know, her brand, I guess, did not translate to another genre, to another like market. Mm-hmm. So that's really unlucky of her, or unlucky for her. But like, I'm trying to think. I mean, I would hope to see that a lot of like the comedy channels become maybe professional comedians or writers for show, or, you know, oh, that's a good one. Derek Comedy, Donald Glover. That man is a success story.
I mean, he's a Renaissance man.
He's a Renaissance. He's probably a terrible example because he really is just like a genius. But I don't know where he started, but when I met him, when I stumbled into him, he was doing Derek Comedy, which was just this like kind of like Whitest Kids, you know, just a young comedy troupe, a bunch of guys making bad skits, hilarious bad skits. And then what did he do? He wrote with Tina Fey. He was on Community. He was in, and then now he's writing and I guess producing and acting in Atlanta. And he rapped for a while. Like he's a musician. He wasn't rapping, I guess. He was a musician. He was
rapping. I mean,
let me not delineate that. He was in the music industry. He did really well for himself. And he was using his skills from Derek Comedy, probably a lot of natural talent, and he actually was able to move that into like TV and do really well for himself. So that's great. Oh, and now he was in one of the new Star Wars movies too, right?
Yeah, he was Lando Calrissian.
So he's like a totally,
I forgot about that.
He unpigeonholed himself from Derek Comedy.
I mean,
that would be the dream. I think for any
definitely say he's definitely the exception to the rule. Actor, singer, musician, comedian, right. Like anything he wants to be, he's gonna be it. But no, I get what you're saying. Actually, you know, I was thinking about it because if you think about, like, say, a musician, an artist, a singer, right? A singer, you know, sing. They have a whole bunch of like popular hits, and then their genre maybe goes out of style or whatever. And like you said, they have the choice of like, I'm going to keep on making music. But a lot of times they go into that production role, right? They're now like bringing up new artists and in the studio and helping other people. Like think of Dr. Dre, for example. Like he was an artist and he can still rap and he can do all that. But his claim to fame now is like Eminem and all these other artists.
Oh yeah,
that
he exploded from producing others.
You know, and I wonder what that path looks like for content creators, because I do think I've seen it with like the Paul brothers, right? They've kind of taken their celebrity from the internet world, and now they've taken it to like the marketing kind of world a little bit. Like they're great marketers of themselves, of their celebrity, like boxing fights. And one of the Paul brothers has a drink line with like another guy, KSI, I think. And they're finding ways to make money, but they don't like YouTube's not their thing really anymore. Right.
Right.
And
it was a launch pad.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, they even create studios and stuff based off of where they just, produce other YouTube channels and then just have, take a cut of their revenue and things like that. But when you mentioned the horror stories, Steve, it really got me thinking, because when YouTube first like hit the scene, there was channels like Smosh and Fred that were,
oh no, not
getting
Fred.
they were getting numbers that didn't make any sense, on the internet, hundreds of thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of people subscribing. Nobody really knew what that meant. And then they were actually kind of some of the ones that pioneered trying to move into movies. And those completely bombed, all of them terrible. And then people started to realize, the difference between like personalized 1.5 minute sketches, and then they also found this out with like Vine comedians and stars, is that it just doesn't translate to an hour and a half of you doing
that reminds me.
Weird bits.
What's his name? Drew Gooden. He had like 3 Vines that were super popular, and now he has I would say, thriving YouTube channel. I don't know what he'll do next, but yeah, he's probably a little early in the cycle we're talking about, but that was a translation that worked really well.
Yeah, and so just, I guess, the call out to, I guess, being at an influential part doesn't automatically mean that once you venture out into your new endeavor, that even your community is going to support it.
Yeah, or follow with you.
If it's bad.
Yeah. I feel like I think, for any successful enterprise in any industry, even outside of like entertainment, I think like being able to know when you need to transition and what you should transition into is like the differentiator between somebody who has a long-term successful career and somebody who is going to stagnate and then struggle and have to find a new job. Because I feel like there are some people who, like, there's some people who hold on too long. You know what I'm saying? It's like that boxer who's 55 years old still, but like that boxer might do well to be a coach, or a promoter or something, or a manager. You know what I'm saying? Like transition, because okay, your time has passed here. And I'm really interested to see like what these really popular, somewhat younger YouTubers do, after. Like, I think some of them are already doing smart stuff. Like, for example, MatPat, right? Like, MatPat has his channel, but I've noticed that he's, like, created a whole brand. He's created, like, production studios. He's, like...
all the different theory channels.
Exactly. So when it's all said and done, he could, like, just go straight into the background. Yeah, he's the face. But at the end of the day, he's created a framework for the future, But, like, I don't know about a Corey Kenshin. Nothing against him. I think he's a great YouTuber, and for those that don't know him, he's like a kind of a nerdy, plays a lot of scary games, but like eventually that's going to dry up. Like you can't depend on people thinking your reaction to every scary game is going to last for the next 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And maybe he's made a lot of money,
sustainability,
and he's good, but like what is his next transition? Does he transition into branding? Because he seems to do really well with branding with companies like Ubisoft and gaming. It's like maybe you move into that space, but I'm afraid that like we're so early in this content creator universe that most people don't see the next step yet, and we're going to see just them disappear, like just evaporate. And then, like you said, they'll be working a normal job. There'll be a social media
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
There'll be a social media manager.
Yeah. I would think in a lot of ways that content creators are seen as a liability to that just to transition into, I guess, the role of managing something else or being part of another company's brand. And I know they try those things out, like with sponsorships and stuff, but it's like really low end things they can pull out of really quick. But to, I guess, get to the point to where you think you can rely on just jumping ship to Ubisoft because you played a bunch of games. I wonder how that transition will work, just because they're still a regular person. If like they're not, I guess, a celebrity who had an agent that said, yeah, you got to behave this way. This is the etiquette. This is how you stay out of trouble. Like, a lot of them are just regular folk who, found a niche, found an audience, and just grew. But, like, still at their core, they're still like a normal person who wouldn't really thrive in that sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you manage that?
I mean, I think that's where, honestly, it just, some people are smart business people or some people are aware of what their strengths are. Like, for example, I think it's King Von, the black dude who, like, he got famous on Vine. And
I remember him,
he's kind of a light skin. He got a kind of big head. He like, what the dog doing? Like, that's King Von. But I've seen him in Netflix movies. I've seen him in different things.
Oh, good.
And he's kind of like a Chris Tucker type in those movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he gets typecast hard.
Kind of comedic kind of guy, but never leading role. Chris Tucker could do leading roles. He was always like the goofy black guy who curses and says,
the high energy friend in the background.
Exactly. The comic relief quite a bit. And I'm like, that's cool.
He's getting paid.
I'm happy that he's getting paid, but sometimes I look at him, I'm like, you got to get out of that fourth man role. Like, if you're going to stay in this industry, if you want to, like, sustain, because you got to figure out what you're going to do. Like, I can feel his career can either take a really great turn and he could be like an actual actor, or he's just going to, oh man, King Von, I remember him,
Yeah.
Like,
and I guess that comes back to what I was saying earlier, is that, like, a lot of influencers don't have talent. Like, they're good at, maybe a lot of them are just lucky. A lot of them are probably just lucky, right? They have some, like, I've said this before about us, like, I don't think we have this necessarily, but you guys disagree. They have, like, a bubbly personality, or they are super attractive, or just something about them
You're bubbly,
brings
Steve.
viewers. Thanks. Something about them brings viewers, and that's great for them. But then, like, you get, like we've been talking about, that eventually fades, and then you're left with no marketable skills. Like, you haven't been, you didn't learn anything.
mm-hmm.
Some people didn't learn anything, and there's, like, some of these people who we've talked about who are, like, going into production and stuff, like Matt Pat. It's because he learned how to, like, running the channel was itself, like, the work that the skill that he learned, and that's what he's using. Mm. Not everyone can do that. There's just not room in the market for everyone to do that. So you just have to get lucky. Like, I mean, I'm not going to give advice to anybody here, but you just have to get lucky that you have a skill that you're honing that will be marketable outside of whatever this is. And so with King Von, having a big goofy head and saying, "What the dog doing?" isn't a skill, right? Like, being sort of funny is enough for Vine, but it's not enough for the leading role.
It's true.
I think he suffers not nothing against the King Von. We're just using you as an example. Shout out to you.
No hard feelings.
Hope your career is going well. But one thing is, like, I feel like it's the same with indie game devs, where, like, you can't necessarily take an indie game dev and then drop them at a AAA studio, because
sure, yeah,
the problem is that you work in a certain environment where you kind of either like for example, even my own job that I work now, like, I'm now in these situations where I have budgets to do stuff, and I don't know what to do with that. Like, because my whole career I've always been, like, doing things, like, with nothing, and I'll ask for help, I'll ask for budgets, but nobody gives it to me. So I've kind of gotten to this role where I always go into something, a new idea, a new project, a new program with the concept that I'll have no financial support. So now I'm in the situation where somebody approaches me like, hey, you have financial support. What would you like to do with it? And I'm like, bro, like, I don't know. You know, like, I don't know what to do with these resources. So they have to kind of attach somebody with me who's used to being, even if they're not the person who like made stuff or did stuff, they're a person who like coordinated that stuff.
They know how to allocate.
Exactly. And they know what to expect and how much things normally cost and, you know, how to ask for a budget and what seems reasonable, what doesn't, you know? And I feel like for people who are in the YouTube space who don't evolve, like, hey, let's create more production. Let's, like, King Von, like, I've seen his videos grow in production value. But as far as what I saw him producing was pretty much the same thing. Like, get his homeboys together, they come up with an idea, and they'd film it pretty quickly, you know? But it's like, you got to take that next step. Okay, cool. Now we need to do like a multi-day shoot. Like, how do we do that? Okay, cool. Now we need to hire a cameraman to support this. You know what I'm saying? Like, make those gradual steps to eventually become a Matt Pat. Because that's what I believe. Like, when you're saying, Steve, I think Matt Pat was very intentional about learning the process and then taking one step forward, one step forward, one step forward. And now he's the boss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, you just made me think of something that's kind of interesting because I remember watching a channel a couple of months ago. It's called Triple Jump that I thought was a really small channel of just two dudes. And it was like a Christmas special or something, but they were doing shout outs to their staff. And I found out they had like 20 people. And I was like, wow, I thought it was just these regular guys, you know, that were just doing their thing because they're not getting a whole lot of views. And then sometime later, I was watching the interview with Mr. Beast and Joe Rogan. And he was like, the most important thing or one of the more important things I did was I surrounded myself with people who were more talented than me, that had great ideas, that were really smart. And that, you know, really the idea of a team when it came to, I guess, the successful content creators has become more evident to me recently because they make it really seem like it's a one-man show, but then the ones that last and the ones that progress and the ones that eventually move out into other areas or grow in a way that's just exponential seeming is because that they're not doing it by themselves. And I feel like you were just saying, you know, what's his name? King Bach? What was his name?
King Von, I think.
King Von.
I think there is a King Bach. I don't even know. I might be wrong.
Anyway, the reason why it seems like he's probably not transitioning well is because, he didn't grow those skills, but he also didn't have like a proper team.
Yeah. I think that's, so, okay. Let me ask y'all a question. We're going to do this live on
Let's
air.
Do it.
What do you think for us as a podcast?
There it
is. I wasn't going this direction, but
thanks for listening, everybody.
As Kyle is talking, I mean, what would it mean for us to say we became professional content creators for our podcast? Like, what would it look like for us to really take it to the next step? You know what I mean? Like for us right now, this is in public knowledge, but like we do this because we want to. Like, I'm a lot of times pushing us a little bit forward, but like at the same time, I'm not pushing us forward in a way that like has any goal other than for us to learn and grow and have, you know, try new things and maybe grow an audience, kind of, sort of. But I'm also like lazy myself. So
he's mean to us. It's abusive.
You know, a little bit abusive. You better do it. Or I'm gonna get out the house. Sorry. But like, I think one of those things is we're just doing this for fun, right? This hasn't become truly work for us yet. So anyway, what do you think it would look like for this to be like a true, like for us to become professional content creators with Super Agile Bros?
That's a tough question to answer because I feel like content creation, and we heard about this when we were doing more indie dev, is that none of this stuff has a manual and you can't follow somebody else's model. And so really trying to figure out what it means to grow our team, to delegate to someone, to know what it means to like bring someone else on. Because it's just three of us. splitting up the work between us and figuring stuff out. But even the transition, like we're not trying to transition from podcasting, but the transition into what it means to be like a production level, like fully staffed, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Just making that step to even having one other person other than us three. I don't even know what that looks like.
I think there's a couple things that I can imagine happening. We would probably shift our topics and really dive into the things that we know best. Maybe that means we do more in-depth review of games quicker, like as they come out. Maybe that means, and not just games, but obviously movies and anime as well. So like really going after the more topical stuff. I think probably we would do more research on our non-deep dive subjects instead of it just being like, hey, what do you guys think? Because if anyone's unaware, like at least I don't do a ton of research. Like a lot of this is just off the top of our heads. Because we're so knowledgeable and just brilliant that we can do that.
We are the best.
Brilliant.
But it would be better, in spite of our knowledge and brilliance, it would be better if we probably did more research. We could talk about more in-depth things. Maybe we could have like proper debates with like, real arguments and stuff.
I disagree.
Okay. I think we would probably do more outside of the podcast. So like there's 3 of us, a lot of times we'll get on and we'll stream like for each other or for some of the guys in our Discord, or just for anyone really. But I think if we did more of that, that's more like influencer type stuff, like getting face-to-face time with people, trying to build our brand, making a website. We have shirts. Kyle made shirts for us, which is kind of cool. And when I say we have shirts, I mean like I have a shirt. Kyle and Brad have shirts.
Now we gotta post the picture.
There are shirts. There are shirts plural.
Like
not that like we're selling merch.
like
they're sharing a single shirt.
We have a shirt. Like us.
We have. It's a big jumbo shirt.
They're wearing it now.
But as I was saying, to move up, we'd probably be like, oh, we sell merch. Like, we sell the shirts. That'd be cool.
Merch drop.
Honestly, having the shirt is kind of a step up.
Yeah.
I've had multiple people ask me about it.
Shout out to Kyle for that. Shout out to Kyle.
That's it's also just, it looks good.
Yeah.
It feels
it's
nice.
a solid
I'm
shirt.
happy I love graphic tees. That's all I ever wear. So it was a good call.
Wait, I want to go back. Kyle, you actively said I disagree to something. What?
Oh, it was nothing in particular. He just said we should debate.
He said debate. I said debate. He said he
so I started debating him.
Oh, I thought you meant you were disagreeing with.
Okay.
Multi-level jokes there.
I got you, Kyle. We were on the same page.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I think number one, it would have to be intent. Number one, like we don't have that intent, right? Well, some people do get like big with no intention, right? So maybe that's not fair, but I think in reality, I mean, if you hit the lotto,
there's
right?
a lot of luck involved.
Luck is involved, but I think most successful content creators are not lucky. They're intentional. Like I would agree. They're very clear about what their goals are, about what they're trying to do. They think about the market, their audience, blah, 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 blah. Right.
That's fair.
Right now, like, other than like us thinking about topics, like, for example, even what we're talking about today, we might have a discussion about it, but it's normally like, oh, like, let's talk about this. And then one of us goes, what about this? And they're like, nah, like, yeah. And then we just like, cool, let's talk about this. And like Steve said, we're not like doing hardcore research. It's just where our brain is at the current time, Yeah. So I feel like we don't have a super intentional goal to be a professional podcast. We just do this. I think another thing is, we'd have to get our name out there. Like, if it's either doing collaborations with other podcasts or content creators or marketing or, you know, buying ads on Google or games or whatever, like, which would also be intentional. And I don't know, like, I've thought about, I mean, I agree, Steve, when you say like we got to do more like other stuff. But
I didn't say we have to do that.
I'm saying as far as like growing.
He demanded it.
Growing. I'm saying for us to be like professional or whatever. But also I think it's a. Oh. But also I just think some people don't do that stuff at all. They just have like one lane. Like, this is what I do. And then maybe they're on Twitter or Facebook or some social media platform. But yeah, what were you going to say, Kyle?
I was going to say, I think it's a bit of kind of a not a give and take situation, but it's like as you progress, there are certain, I guess, things that come along that make you like, it's like, since we haven't grown a lot and, you know, our viewership hasn't grown a lot, there isn't a whole lot of people that we're really, you know, influencing or reaching right now. It hasn't really compelled us, I guess, to grow, like using the term "don't grow bigger than your britches" type of thing. Like, we've been kind of comfortably gaining traction, being consistent, figuring out processes, and it's like, you know, if there was, I guess,
infrastructure.
Yeah, it's like we don't have, I guess, a whole lot of demand right now that we need to meet. And so I think that's one of those things that would kind of force us into those other areas where we, I guess, consider those things more heavily than we are now. Not that we're not considering them at all, but it's just like they're not, you know, there's no fire underneath us to get those things done.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I would like to clarify really quick. When I said lucky earlier about, you know, influencers not having talent, I meant lucky instead of talent, not lucky instead of intention. So yeah, I'm glad you said that, Brad.
You're all talentless hacks.
All of you.
That is what I said, but you're exaggerating. But I do think intent is there, and that's important. So I'm glad you said that, Brad. I guess those are probably the three things that make someone successful: is intent, luck, and or talent.
Yeah,
you need at least one or two of those.
It's a triangle.
It's true. You can be talented with no luck, and you ain't gonna make it, son. With no intention.
Well, you might.
With no intention.
You might.
Like,
but,
you know, like, yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh,
but
yeah.
if you're not
yeah,
lucky, you're not going to. You know.
You really will. You really would.
But
you need it.
No, it makes me like it's just that in many ways, like, I really want to see us grow. Like, I say this to the guys all the time. Yeah, I'd love to see us grow. I want us to grow. But at the same time, I think that in order for us to make that next step, it would be a opportunity cost, right? We'd have to either put more effort into this in some other areas that we're maybe not strong at, but we'd have to reduce our effort in something else that we may be doing outside of this, right? So it's kind of like, it goes back to the question, Steve, I think maybe you posed this, or one of y'all posed this, like, when does a hobby or something that you do for fun become work? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that transition for y'all? Because for me, it's like, I really enjoyed making my YouTube channel, and it was growing, and I was enjoying it. But I think reality is, like, the reason I haven't made a new video, I have the content ready. I could record it tomorrow, like, honestly. But I think I'm at this point where my YouTube channel feels like it's just a job that I have to do. And it's gone further than what my intention was. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
My intention was to make videos on YouTube and grow an audience that would have impact and help people, like, develop or make games or grow in certain skills. But now I feel like I struggle because I have people asking me to do certain videos or make certain things. And, like, I'm cool and I want to do that, but there's a lot of effort involved in that. There's a lot of, like, planning, and it detriments things like this. Like, if I'm doing that, I can't really spend time thinking about what we would do for Super Agile Bros. You know what I mean? And now it's just work. Like, now if I make a YouTube video, like, all right, let's do this, you know?
I think
yeah.
I think that, so the way I see it is that there, and maybe it's splitting hairs, but I'll explain what I mean. But that there's kind of a difference between work and what's a job. It's like, I think whenever what you're doing that you've done because you wanted to, you know, when you do it and you put a lot of work into it, it can become your job. But I think that there's also an opportunity, you know, like for us now, right? Like we're putting in work in this podcast. This is what we want to do. But then we have a day job, and like we leave, or when the day job's over, then that's when our work begins. Cause like, you know, you can get fired from a job, but like the work that you produce, you can't get fired from that. So it's like, in my mind, there's a little bit of a difference. And like, again, it might be splitting hairs, but I feel like it's different when, you know, what you love to do becomes work and it's also profitable. Like you're making money off of it. And then I think there's a transition that can happen when the work you're doing becomes the mundane thing that we consider to be a job. And then that's like the hard part, because like you don't have to get motivated necessarily to do the work, because that's what you love to do. That's what you want to do. That's what you're made to do. That's what you feel like you're in your being when you're doing that work, putting in that work. But when you're on the job, it's soul sucking, you know?
Well, I might disagree a little bit, because to me, like if I was work for a job, I think I'd be more inclined to do it. Maybe once again, where like definitions of job and work are different. But let's just say if I knew that when I put time into my YouTube, I would get some like, I don't want to say monetary, but some gain that actually mattered to me.
Sure.
Then I'd probably continue to invest in it. But right now, I can't see a gain that's worth the effort, you know? Like, I can see a gain worth the effort even with this. Like, even though I'm not putting more work into the Super Agile Bros than I am currently doing, but I could see myself putting another extra 20, 30, 40% and getting something out of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's not feasible because of life, but I could see it, you know? And if somebody told me, hey, y'all are, you know, we have plenty of listens and plenty of followers that I'm happy with. But like if somebody said, oh, like, hey, you guys are making enough money to support all three of your lifestyles and your goals financially. You know, I'm like, well, it's now work, but it's a job. Okay, I might be willing to do this more. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
I think what seems to be the difference for me is so right now this doesn't have, like, there's a challenge that I've kind of set for myself, you know, to do the work involved with this podcast. And that's fine. Like, challenge is good. It's something I've set for myself, and there's satisfaction and stuff with completing a challenge. I think the difference when it would feel like work is if this demanded a commitment of me.
Yeah.
You know, like, not something that I do for myself, but that I do for outside forces. That's when it would become work.
So to be more clear, an external commitment. Like, so no longer intrinsic.
Yeah.
You're not getting in. It's like intrinsically, you're like, oh, like this is what I want to do for X, Y, and Z reason. I do this for this. But if all of a sudden, you know, somebody said, hey, Steve, I'm going to need you to record 3 episodes this week and also research this and play these 2 games and be ready by Friday, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that difference, where that difference is for everybody, will depend on how motivated you are. So for me, I'm not very motivated. So I fall much more on the side of like, look, I just want to goof off and have fun and like hang out with you guys. Whereas someone like Brad, who's I think a lot more motivated than I am, both of you probably are, but I think Brad is like the motivation guy here.
For sure.
Yeah, but like, I think for Brad, he probably falls more on the side of like, well, I was going to do all this stuff anyway, so for me, it doesn't feel like a commitment. But then like this other stuff, which is like way more intense, that would be a commitment. That's when it's not work, or that's when it becomes work. So that in my head, that's kind of where things fall. So like my job, I do enjoy my job. People are like, oh, if you enjoy your job, you'll never work a day in your life. That's not true, because while I enjoy my job,
It still works.
it is there is a commitment.
Effort. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a commitment involved in my job that's higher than like I might feel like giving at a given time.
Yeah.
That phrase has some dangerous connotations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's a falsehood. And I don't think any person who says that actually is ever like
Enjoyed their work.
Yeah, or
They've never been there.
Had to support themselves.
Yeah, like who've had to really think about it from a purely like survival standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have the benefit of like you could do whatever you want because it doesn't really matter. But yeah, like I like my job. I really enjoy my job that I currently have. But 100% is work. I had 7 meetings today. You know, like 7 meetings and 6 of them I hosted directly. You know?
Ooh.
Like you can't tell me that's not work. Even if I enjoy the outcomes of it, even if I enjoy interact with the people in those meetings, it's still work. I still get tired. I still have to take a rest. And the reality is like, I think where I'm landing in all content creation in general is that I do enjoy it. And I still to this day, I'm not sure if that's what God has for me to be like an entertainer, content creator, you know what I'm saying? Like that world. I do know when I'm the most alive is when I'm creating something and producing something. Like, I feel like that's where I'm like truly using the gifts that God has given me. But at the same time, it's just this balance of, but will this put food on the table though? You know? So if something I'm doing content creation wise starts to bleed over into like affecting things that put food on my table, and I don't believe that thing is going to put food on my table, then it's work that's unacceptable.
Yeah, you got to drop it.
You know, it's like, yeah, it's not worth it. Like, it's not pushing me forward in a direction that's going to help me or my family or my friends. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the value has to be there in some capacity. You know, like even if it's not quote unquote lucrative, to be a detriment to, your lifestyle or affecting your family negatively, or even your mental health or something because you're feeling some sort of tremendous weight having to produce, content every week or whatever, then yeah, that's definitely where it becomes a problem.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's one thing that we don't think about with this podcast in general is that I was thinking about this the other day. This podcast, as we've created and we've gone down this process of continually, bit by bit, like for all of our listeners out there, like just know that we really enjoy doing this. We're so thankful for you listening, and we are trying to grow. Like, we might be like, like this is something we do for fun, but that doesn't mean we're not trying to do our best with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
we want it to be nice, and presentable.
Sure. But that is at our pace. You know what I mean? Like at the speed that we can do. And one thing I've been really proud of is just, and why I do believe that we are content creators, and I feel very confident in saying that, is that we continue to push ourselves a little bit more every time, right? We continue to just grow a little bit more, try to make this a little bit better experience for ourselves and our listeners. Like even with the change of going from 50 to 51 to 52, like even like a small thing that might not seem like a big deal is like changing the intro song. Like that's a big deal, having an intro, like that's a big deal. And we're putting our heart into that. Kyle making shirts for us. Yeah, maybe none of y'all will ever get a shirt unless you could send me a blank check with your signature on it, and I got you. But like
you will get a shirt at some point.
You'll get a shirt at some point.
It won't even have Super Agile Bros on it. It'll be
a blank shirt. Like it came from us.
A used white t-shirt.
But each of these things is like a step forward for us. And not that things get easier, but we are getting we're getting better at it, if that makes sense. You know?
Yeah. We're slowly investing more and more. I've been thinking about the fact that now we have pretty consistent video game stock running during the YouTube videos. And, all of us are like pitching in and recording our game sessions for that. So you'll see me on Hades at some point in the next couple of YouTube videos. Maybe on this one, who knows?
Ooh.
Yeah. So that reminds me, when we released our trailer a few months ago, there was like clips of Hades gameplay. And I was thinking like, man, I play Hades so much, and we used some like random dude stock footage.
What an offense.
That's
Missed opportunity.
Missed opportunity. Exactly. So now we got more of that. And I've been working on a way to like transcribe our stuff so we can have better timestamps. I've been kind of slack on that the last couple of weeks, but all this new AI technology is coming out, so maybe it's a good time to jump back in. Like we're laying down infrastructure and like process. We have more. We just added a new channel to our Slack just for discussing like the release schedule and the little the stupid little bylines and descriptions of stuff that you guys read when you see our posts. So we didn't have that. We were just doing it all in one place. We were doing it all the last minute. Now we're more scheduled. There's a lot of incremental changes going on. It's pretty cool, actually. Man,
and I think it's really important that you guys are bringing up the little victories, I guess, that are easy to overlook because, not to say it wrong, but you can forget where you came from when it comes to stuff like this. We are 50 plus episodes deep, and so there are things that are just like second nature to us now, where even having a remembering to have a conversation about what the title of video was early days, it was a problem. Make sure we had consistent intros, outros, all that stuff. And it's like hours and days, if not sometimes a week, of us back and forth figuring stuff out. And, once we've got it to a place to where it's kind of seamless, I think we almost, at least I'll say me, I kind of take it for granted sometimes that we have these conversations and that we just remember to routinely bring this stuff up. Whereas it still takes effort every time we do, but it's no longer that initial effort of remembering to do it. It's just part of our process now.
Yeah.
And so I remember, one of the things you did, Brad, early on was like go on Reddit and stuff and post to people about starting a podcast and seeing what other people did. And, I feel like we're getting to a place to where, as far as influencers are concerned, that we have tools and resources and processes and ideas and suggestions if somebody wanted to start a podcast or just become a content creator in general, because we're on so many different platforms, the things to expect, what you have to plan for, and things of that nature that you just wouldn't know about if you hadn't been there.
Yeah. It makes me think what you said earlier, Kyle, about, what was it, the something bros? No, who have like a team of 20 or something? What was that?
Oh yeah, triple jump.
Triple jump. And I get it now, especially being in this place. I mean, number one, I'm super thankful. As time has progressed, I think that everything we do as a podcast has become more collective. Before I used to make all the titles for the videos. That's why they were all trash, right? but now we discuss them like what do you think? Before I was coming up with all the topics. That's why the first 5 episodes were just all over the place, right? But now we discuss it a little bit more, Sometimes we already know what's coming because we've already scheduled it, right? Like Steve has gone through the process of giving us a whole scheduling, so we kind of know what's coming and what's happening. And, Kyle is very good about making sure, the title cards are made. Here's the idea. What do you guys think about this? Nuancing thing, getting our ideas. So we kind of have this, I wouldn't say intrinsic, because it's definitely something that we had to work for, like creating these systems. But I really do get why content creators have teams, because I feel like the more you have working together collectively, teamwork makes the dream work. And also creating systems and frameworks where you feel like you could just I don't want to say plug and chug, but more like know what, like, hey, we already have the basic set. Let's work on the thing to make it better. Like we don't have to think about how do we record, guys. Like we have a checklist before we record every episode. So like the quality is consistent now. Cool. Let's move to the next thing. Yeah. Were you about to say something, Steve?
I don't think so. I've just been vibing.
Just vibing. Just feeling it. Just rush over my body. Yeah.
Just chewing 5 gum. You know how it is.
Yeah.
We were talking, we're talking about creative endeavors, right? This whole thing kind of has been swirling around creative endeavors. Mm-hmm. What are, aside from like streaming on Twitch, what are some creative endeavors that you guys maybe could see us getting into kind of like alongside the podcast as part of the brand? So like in the Discord, we've been talking about writing the last day or two. And, one of the guys sent us like a little short story that he wrote for work. And I sent him one of the short stories I wrote about work. And we were talking about stuff like that, and I've been thinking all day, like, I want to maybe try NaNoWriMo is coming up in November. I haven't ever done that before. It's super scary to even think about. But I don't know. What are some like kind of out there creative stuff you guys have been thinking about, if anything?
So Super Agile Bros video game.
just us jumping.
A game studio?
It has to be a side scroller. Like, before we answer this question, I want to say something to our Discord community directly that, like, I actually really smiled. So recently, I went to the guys and I said, "Hey, y'all." So currently, I'm in the actively making a game. Like, I'm putting it together. I'm about to start playtesting some of it, and I said to them, like, "Hey, guys, like, I don't feel comfortable putting my playtest in a random channel, like, and like diluting our Discord. Other conversations. Where do you think I should put it? Should I put it in random? And then Kyle was like, "Oh, we should make a creative channel where we could discuss anything creative, And so we were going back and forth on what we title it, what would be its purpose. So I made the channel, and I just like posted like a few things in there, like, hey, like if you're interested in this, and then I put the purpose of the channel, and then like I got busy. So I kind of like stepped away from Discord for a few days. And so I came back and I was like, I was so proud of our community. Like without us necessarily saying like, do this, guys. Like the creative channel is a thing now, like just discussion. And I was like, this is really cool. Like it's like actually creative discussion. We created a space for it, and our community, there was something there, I don't know. I was really proud of that. Like our community is really awesome. So shout out to everybody in the Discord.
Not to sound like too corporate, but the engagement is very good in the Discord.
The KPIs
we're using, though.
The key performance indicators we're using for the Discord. but really, but anyway, back to the question. What are the things? Yeah, go ahead, Kyle. You were going to say something.
I was? What was I?
Started, and I think I kind of cut you off.
I don't even remember what I was going to say.
No, I think you cut yourself off, bro.
So
you started.
So what was the question again, Steve? Sorry.
I don't remember.
Oh, no. You asked what are the next steps we could take outside of, yeah.
It was like what, not necessarily like next steps, not a plan, but just kind of like what wild, interesting, creative endeavors do you guys think that we could possibly ever connect? So like I've been thinking about writing. I guess, it'd be interesting to think about a Super Agile book. Super Agile book. Yeah.
SAB.
The book that bites back. I'm so far away from writing a book. Please do not expect a book from me. Anybody.
You should say a pamphlet.
A pamphlet. A
blog.
A novella.
A white paper.
Yeah. It really would. Honestly, knowing me, it would probably read like a white paper.
So terrible.
I want to. I mean, you mentioned it kind of off the cuff.
You said a game, Brad.
No,
that was me. That was a joke. But in the vein of gaming, though, I really like the streams, like streaming, and So I think getting more consistent or figuring out something with those, I guess, to make them, I guess, a bigger part of our community would be really fun. Because I know that we do have people in our community who do stream as well. And so I feel like Twitch or wherever you stream would be a great place for us to just meet up and hang out. Mm-hmm. The Discord has been great for that, but I don't know. Just being in a stream is different.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think Kyle just, recently was streaming the game we made, and, he streamed, Steve streams as well. I don't really stream as much as y'all, but just even jumping in and just being like a second voice, just being the color commentary was just fun. Like just saying stuff. Oh yeah, I remember this and da-da-da. So I think that would be like I don't want it to be a thing. That's the biggest thing to me. Like,
yeah.
I enjoy just hanging with y'all and talking, and I enjoy our community and people who like talking to us. So the last stream that we did when we had like 5 or 6 people in the chat just chatting, like that to me was fun because it felt like it was like an actual hangout. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'd like our streams to be like more hangouts where we're like, maybe it's just Kyle playing a game and we're all hanging out talking about it. Yeah, I think that just would naturally fit because we're already chatty Cathys.
Yeah, the spontaneity definitely needs to be, I think, a staying point to some degree. Just because, the reactions to everything just seems more visceral, I guess, when it's... And, like, we can have a consistent podcast upload schedule, but everything else can be spontaneous.
I'm down with that. I like that. It's especially good for me because I already play games, and so just streaming them, isn't that much more work.
I already play games. In his white paper, I already play games. You should play them as well. They're very enjoyable.
They're good for relaxation. Unless you're playing Dark Souls.
Actually, like, this is something, Steve, you kind of are saying the writing thing, but I honestly think we could, and actually I was thinking about this outside of the podcast, but, like, I was thinking about how one skill I believe that we have now individually and maybe collectively is just how to get something started, to continue it. And I think on that writing vein, it would be cool for us to like write a book about how to create a podcast, like what it takes to make one that's consistent, sustainable, and still enjoyable for you, or just how to be friends. I don't know. Maybe that
self-help book. I love it.
Don't read this self-help book.
Reverse psychology. Ooh.
This is a self-hurt book.
Oh no.
Self-hurt.
Double reverse psychology.
Oh my gosh. Self-hurt book. Yikes.
Don't do that.
So yeah, I feel like I stole y'all's ideas, but
yeah, thanks.
Other than that, I don't know. I think it'd be cool for us to do stuff. I don't know, I don't know,
for me, half the interest in writing the last couple. Well, honestly, it's mostly been renewed because of the conversations we've been having. But it's always kind of been in the back of my head, like, when I was younger, I thought I could be a writer. I wrote a little bit. And I think most of the interest these days isn't necessarily to like get published or get famous or have even like a good finished product, even though obviously just like this, I would like to have a good finished product. I think I just don't want my brain to rot. I want to exercise my brain in some way and in a creative way. And, I play so many games. I'm like, I would love to make a game. That'd be sick. But I think writing something is a lot closer to within my grasp.
Yeah.
Just because of who I am and the experiences I've had and the expertise that I have, and especially the expertise that I don't have. So that's why I say, I want to write something. I'll probably be jumping into the NaNoWriMo this year. We'll see if my schedule allows it. But just even if nothing good comes of it, I think what they've done is a really interesting idea. Like, just write something, even if it's 50,000 words of garbage. Just write something.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
that
can
sounds
get
like
behind that.
that sounds like a similar mentality behind like game jams.
Game jams,
you know?
Yeah. Heck, we should do Nano Gemo, am I right?
You're not right.
Or maybe I am right. Maybe that could be our thing for Super Agile Bros. We just have like national novel game writing.
I think I've
month.
already told you guys about what I really want to do in the long term. I just think it takes more effort and more planning. I'm going to put it out there, but I honestly want to create an adult gaming league. Like a Super Agile Bros adult gaming league where it's like season based, where we play different games throughout the season. And like at the end of the season, there's like a winner. So like beginning of the season is Fortnite. The next season, the first like multiple matches of games. Like, so the first 2 weeks is Fortnite. The second 2 weeks, it's Mario Kart. The next 3 weeks, and it's like this bracket of adult gamers. And we're like, somebody might be better at Mario Kart, Steve. So he's going to get a lot of points in that season, that part.
Kyle's also pretty good at Mario Kart.
At that part. But like, you could come back in another game, or some would be multiplayer, some would be like single player. Like, just something where we could just play games together, just collectively as adults with real lives, and knowing that none of us are tryhards, like in the realist sense. But it would still be challenging because we're all gamers. So I'd love to have
sufficiently sweaty.
Yeah, sufficient.
I think we could come up with something. We can work on that. We can talk more after this.
Yeah, so the Super Agile Bros Adult Gaming League. Sorry?
I was going to say, on that note of, I guess, coming up with things afterwards, I love the community input, too, when it comes to this type of stuff. I think, figuring out, I guess, how to make suggestions and stuff a little bit, I don't want to say easier to collect, but just to know, I guess, because I feel like the creative discussion channel is something that we could have done sooner, but, really didn't have, I guess, a vision for.
Yeah, we didn't know.
And I feel like there are other things like that would benefit us in both the Discord community as far as its healthiness and ability to thrive, as well as our growth and our I guess our reach and things of that nature. Just things that we just aren't aware of that we could start implementing.
Yeah, more community input. So, Steve, you won't like this suggestion.
Okay.
But I think it's something that we could actually probably do pretty well. And I almost feel like we could probably do commentary on like interesting topic. Like, there's YouTube commentary channels. They play a video and they talk about a thing and their opinions and thoughts. Like, I feel like if we really wanted to, we could get into the commentary space in a different way. Like, we're a trio, we talk about it, and we're also not overly disrespectful. Like
deep dives on current events.
Like, we're disrespectful. Like, just check out our Slack. But like, I think we could have very nuanced and interesting perspectives on what's happening in the world that just is not talked about. Like, we all have a different background and goals than I think some other channels. Like, in life, I mean, like, life goals. And I think that our belief systems, what we would and would not do, like, if something came up that's, like, topical, I think we could have an interesting take on it. That would be meaningful to people. But, yeah.
You'll definitely have to do more to convince me some other time.
He is not convinced.
I have not yet been convinced.
So, I don't know, man. I mean, content creation is one of those things that I don't know if I ever knew that I would be in it, but I don't know. I guess last question for y'all. Did y'all ever think you would be content creators?
Not recently, but like I said, when I was younger, I thought maybe I could be a writer or write.
Okay.
So I guess in the specific terms of content creator, probably not. But I feel like most of my life, I've spent trying to do things that allows me to make stuff for other people. And so when I was younger, I used to make like comic books and stuff that I want other people to read. And then, transitioned into game development a little bit. And now, I'm running my side business, making t-shirts. And so it's just, and then before that, I was, heavily into freelance graphic design, video editing, just stuff that I could make for people either to enjoy or that they send to me. They want me to fix something. They want me to do something for them. I don't know. And so I think that all kind of falls under the umbrella of content creation. My first journey, I guess, into YouTube, I didn't feel like it was going to be something that I would maintain, and I didn't. my YouTube channel is very dormant, and so I never saw myself, like, I guess, sticking somewhere with content creation in this way, even though I've always kind of enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
But I always knew I was going to be making stuff for people in some capacity.
Yeah, I can feel that. I got to shout out one of my homeboys, D-Pot. Hey, what to do, D-Pot?
Hey.
Because I feel like he's always been a believer in me in being a creative. Like, he's always like, yo, man, you should do this. Or, yo, like, he'll, like, throw ideas, especially when we were, like, younger and in college. He'd, like, throw ideas my way. But I always, like, thought to myself, like, yeah, like, that's a little bit beyond my pay grade, right? Like, making videos or recording things, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just never occurred to me that I would actually be able to do it. You know, I think the first time I actually thought that maybe I could put content online is when I used to breakdance or b-boy. I used to record all of the videos in our local scene, like every battle, like I knew everybody's name because I was a part of the community. So I was like putting up my videos on my YouTube channel, and then like people would reach out to me like, hey man, can you put up the video between this person and this person? I'm like, yeah, I'm putting up soon. You know, like, hey, do you have this video? Or they'd like tell me like, oh, that person is this person, you know? And this is my YouTube channel from back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was starting to realize like, oh, like I could just keep doing this and I could maybe grow a following, but
relevant content.
I never thought about it. I just was like, oh, that'd be cool. But I never invested. And so it's cool to be here now where I'm like, I'm investing in something. Maybe it's just a hobby and what I do for fun, but I feel like you said, Kyle, like I feel happy to be here. So it'd be like that. Well, cool. Well, any last thoughts on this whole content creator boys and girls situation? Or y'all boys?
What? Excuse you?
Do you have any last thoughts, Steve?
No. No, I have no more thoughts. I'm all out of thoughts.
His brain is empty.
Yeah. So is my stomach, man. I'm hungry. Aren't you guys hungry? It's dinner time.
It do be dinner time. It do be dinner time. Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, like, we talked about this in, like, episode 50, you know, like we never thought we'd get this far.
Recently.
But we here. But I feel like I'm really interested to see, like, what content creation, does it become, like, something that eventually is, like, becoming an actor or a movie star where it's just, like, the boundaries, like, the barrier to entry gets even higher in 10 years from now? Like this is, you know, or does it always feel like this where it's just lots of trash and then some people doing it right? And will influencers be a thing in the future? But yeah, I mean, thanks for listening to this episode of Super Agile Bros. You know, we love making this for y'all. We do it for fun. We do it for the fam. We do it for the Discord. We do it for ourselves. But this is just what we do.
Especially for the money.
For the money. We are professional content creators. You know, professional. Steve doesn't get paid, but me and Kyle, we pull in them racks on racks on racks. You know, he's the
racks of rats.
Yes,
racks of cockroaches.
Yes. Surret mama. I was like, if he don't do it, I'm gonna do it.
You know, I had to.
I hate you.
Surret mama. So, once again, as I always do, I want to thank the brothers themselves. Mr. Kyle, thank you for being here today. It was a
Thank
joy.
you, Mr. Bread.
Yes. You know, he'd be how it be. And of course, welcome back, Steve. We're happy to have
Welcome
you back.
You know, I gotta confess, I everything I said at the beginning
was true.
Totally made up. It was all made up. I just heard you guys say it last episode. I thought it'd be funny to repeat it. You know, please don't take it to
Peer
heart.
pressure.
In his endeavor to write, that was the first thing he wrote down.
That's what he's gonna submit to the nano. Like,
he was so focused on when he would write, he didn't consider what he would write.
Look at that strong start. That's all you submit.
That's all I submit.
You
And
win.
I lose because the only ingredient
Somebody
is
be like, this is
50,000
making
words.
a statement about what writing really is. Even in these words, he's saying more than we can even understand. You'd win.
I'm just gonna send in 5 photographs because each photo is 10,000 words.
Get
Snap.
banned for 10 years in the competition. Like, how dare you? But as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for being our fans, our supporters, our people, for listening this far. Like, it really means the world to us. This is something we love doing, and we'll keep on doing it as long as the Lord allows us. So thank you for just being here. And as always, if you don't know, you can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. And we also have a Facebook page that goes by the same name as our podcast, Super Agile Bros. So find us on the Facebooks. At the end of the day, if you don't know where to find us, just Google search us and we'll come up. We are the realists, the professional content creators. So as always, thank you for listening. And until next time, y'all take it easy.
Bye.
Oh,
Interrupted.
Yeah, I got in there.
you
I
messed
thought I
up my
was gone
flow.
already.
You messed up my flow. I have a flow to this. I have a flow. Until next time, peace.